Bitcoin just hit $750. My British pound is dropping in value, going in the toilet. What should I do? What is going on with the world?
Well, what's going on with the world is that the system of central banking is now experiencing a worldwide crisis that's completely unprecedented. It's never happened before. You have, I think, about $25 trillion of bonds that are now negative yield, several interest rates that are negative, and dozens of central banks around the world, currency crisis after currency crisis.
Right, and negative interest rates, for people that don't know, means that you give them money.
To hold your money.
To hold your money. So you pay them interest to hold your money.
Yes.
The opposite of anything we've known in the last few hundred years, or ever, really.
Yes. In fact, orthodox economics used to say that negative interest rates are impossible and you shouldn't even approach the zero bound for very long. And yet now you have more than 20 central banks at the zero bound, some in negative interest rates. You know, I sometimes start my talks and I say, I'm going to talk to you about a radical monetary experiment. And everybody thinks I'm going to talk about Bitcoin. And I say the radical monetary experiment is that more than 20 central banks have their interest rates at negative. This has never happened before. And they're stuck. They have no way out. So, you know, it's a really interesting space because the whole thing about currency is that you don't need to know how it works unless it stops working. And when it stops working, everybody needs to know how it works because your wealth, the future of your children, everything now depends on that. And so country after country after country, people are learning the hard lesson that currency doesn't matter until it does.
Right.
Because it's not working anymore.
And you were just in Buenos Aires. Obviously, Argentina has a long history of sometimes its currency not working.
Right.
Brazil is having a bit of a problem now. Of course, you know, the government going through an impeachment. And I heard you also mention, you know, Britain and Brexit and the pound along those in that same sentence when you were talking to Rogan, and it shocked me. And then I realized, well, wait a second, our currency is down, you know, 20% on the year, which for a G7 country is shocking.
Yes, although it's not representing the same.
Investment Club. Today, I consider it the best investment that I've ever made. We get 4 projects presented a week by their associated CEOs. Personally, I'm completely blown away by the quality of these projects, and I know of nowhere else where I would be given this same opportunity. Each week that passes, I feel more appreciative of the fact that I'm a member of this group. The vibe was just tremendous. Everybody's on the same wavelength. We just clicked. Everybody listened to each other, enjoyed their company. It was just magical, magical. Take action. Don't take my word for it. Due diligence you need to do. And I really hope that someday down the road I see you in the club. It far exceeded expectations, without question.
Problems that you see in places like Brazil or Argentina, or now also Venezuela, Zimbabwe again. These places are suffering in many cases from hyperinflation, and they're suffering from an overabundance of debt where it gets to the point where the interest rate payments on the debt are overwhelming for the budget of the country.
Sure.
So it's not just about repaying the debt. You can't even make payments in the interest. It's like when your credit cards snowball, where the minimum payment on your credit cards is now so big that you're using a credit card to pay the minimum payments on the other credit cards, and that's the last spiral, right?
Right.
Britain isn't really in that place. I think it's more of a short-term shock because of the unexpected outcome of the Brexit vote. And uncertainty about how the rules will work once Britain is no longer part of the European Union. So,
right. But it makes people who normally wouldn't even bother understanding what a currency is all about. It's the pound. It's always been there. It's always roughly 1.5 to the dollar, you know. But now, when they now go try to buy things, or they're wondering why property values are going down or these things are happening, now they have to look at a hard look in the mirror and start asking themselves, like, what is a currency?
Right.
And then what is Bitcoin? And what are some of these other options?
Right. And, you know, it's as I said, it's a short-term shock of confidence, not a long-term and almost permanent loss in confidence, which is very hard to recover from. Once the people no longer believe that the currency will have value tomorrow because it hasn't or it's collapsed in the past. Reestablishing that trust is very, very difficult. And you see that in places where that cycle has broken again and again and again. Zimbabwe just started printing its own currency again. For the last 7 years or 8 years, they haven't had their own currency. They trade in foreign currencies because their own collapsed so dramatically. They printed, hundreds, then 1,000 Zimbabwe dollar bills, then 10,000, then 100,000, then 1 million, then 10 million, 1 billion, 10 billion, 1 trillion. When you're printing $1 trillion bill, you have a problem. And then you get to the point where, and we're seeing this in Venezuela now, where prices double while you're having a beer in the bar, and they say, okay, for the next round, the price is going to be double. And when people stop counting money and start weighing it instead of counting it, so you see people throwing a stack on. I remember in the previous crisis in Zimbabwe, I was watching a BBC documentary. There's a guy pushing a wheelbarrow full of cash, stacks and stacks and stacks of cash. And they asked him, aren't you worried they're going to steal the money that you have in the wheelbarrow? He says, no, I'm worried that they're going to steal the wheelbarrow, which is worth more than the money that's in it. And they also asked him, why don't you burn it? And he said, because goat shit burns better.
These are real currency crises that we should kind of be aware of that are happening.
Right, and this is a recurring theme. So in fact, statistically speaking, national currencies have a shelf life of about 30 years before they collapse in value because no government can resist the temptation of financing profligacy through printing. And so they print and print and print, and they devalue the currency and inflate it to nothing. And they keep printing, and eventually you have this sudden collapse in confidence, and the currency spikes, the inflation spikes, and the value just drops.
Hey, I know investing in crypto is scary. It takes a real leap of faith because there are so many scams, rug pulls, and bad actors out there. It's a dangerous business, which is why 95% of people lose all their money. Well, that's why I created the London Real Investment Club, so you can access the hottest deals on the planet and use the crypto bull market to create the generational wealth that you deserve. Join my team of over 100 people from around the world that are making millions of dollars behind the scenes investing in blockchain, AI, Web3 games, DeFi, Bitcoin, and more. Don't miss out. Click the link below to book a call with one of my team now. But hurry, this bull market will end soon.
I know investing in crypto can be scary. That's why you gotta join the investment club. Pull the trigger. Let's do this.